What is up, guys? It's your favorite transparent YouTuber, Transparent Hoodie, back at it again with another Devil May Cry discussion video. Today we're going to be finally discussing whether or not is Devil May Cry 5 the final game in the Devil May Cry lineup. And this is just based off of story, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if this game makes enough money, if this game do well enough within the media aspect of it and the selling aspect of it, obviously, there could potentially still be a Devil May Cry 6 if the fan outcry is there, or if Capcom do feel like this game has more to offer. This game could still be a thing regardless. But I'm going to just cover some of the reasons why I think this might be Itsuno's final Devil May Cry installment in the franchise, only because it's fitting. First things first, let's just talk about Devil May Cry 4, for example. So for Devil May Cry 4, the game couldn't leave off on that note. For the most part, the game kind of felt, and I feel like everybody had that same feeling where their game felt kind of rushed. It wasn't a complete game design wise and storyline wise. It didn't feel like a total story for neither Dante nor Nero. It did feel like Nero's beginning, but the story for the most part, in my personal opinion, didn't do anything for Dante. You can make the argument that overall Dante was supposed to be a sideliner character compared to someone like Nero, who was supposed to be the up-and-comer, but both their stories didn't feel like it had much substance to it at all. Besides, obviously, some of the side content that added to the characters and added to the situation that happened in Devil May Cry 4. But besides that, besides just Devil May Cry 4 being the type of game that it was, I still feel like when it comes to a lot of the promotional work for Devil May Cry 5, it also teases the whole fact that this game could potentially be the end for Devil May Cry, but in a different way. I don't think personally the franchise is going anywhere. They can obviously call the game something else. They can lean the game in the different direction with a different character that I'll talk about at the end. But for right now, I'm gonna say this. I think Devil May Cry 5 is the end for something, and that end is for Dante's storyline. I believe they try to have the same tone for Devil May Cry 4, but again, it just didn't land well. But they're doing it very splendidly, very perfectly, in my opinion, in Devil May Cry 5. Me and my friend Street King, we made a lot of parallels to Dante's and Virgil's relationship, kind of like, I don't know if a lot of you guys are familiar with this series, but the originals, like we make a lot of comparisons to Dante and Virgil's relationship, kind of like Niklaus and Elijah. And not to say that's the only brothering comparison that you can make to Dante and Virgil, there's so many out there. But when it comes to Niklaus and Elijah, I personally feel like it's the closest, only because of the aesthetic that the show has for these two characters, where they technically still do love each other. They still do have their own ideals. One do care for the other no matter what. They'll never really go that far. Like, maybe because they have to uphold a certain type of, I want to say ideology that they believe in, and the other one doesn't necessarily mesh well with that, then at the end of the day, they're going to have their little scuffles. But for the most part, I do believe that Dante does not truly hate his brother, and Virgil does not truly hate his brother. So, and that's arguable. But besides that, like, I want to show you guys a couple of examples of why I think this is the end for Dante's storyline. So, for example, you have the cinematic trailer that just came out, the final trailer for Devil May Cry 5, before the game came out. And I want you guys to notice something about the trailer. So, when it comes to the trailer, it was cinematically cut a particular type of way, right? So obviously it was cut that way so it doesn't give you too much spoilers on what's going to actually happen in the game. But I want you guys to realize something. So when the trailer was cut, it was cut in such a way where you saw the kid in the closet, who we believe, or we know that is Dante. I believe it's Dante, but hey, I could be wrong. But I believe that particular character is Dante. And you saw the parallel with him being contrasted with his mother. At the same time, you had a snippet of Virgil with Urizen. And I want to make a whole separate video talking about it itself, but I'll mention it briefly here. But I do believe that Sparda could potentially be Urizen. But I'll leave my explanations and my reasonings for my other video. But that's just how I feel. So the way how they cut that video, or the way how they cut that trailer, my fault, it pretty much highlighted that, yes, this is Eva, this is Dante, this is Sparda, this is Virgil, and the epic conclusion to these characters' stories is going to be shown and concluded in Devil May Cry 5. And I just thought that was such a very cool parallel. Like, I don't know if a lot of people realize that. Maybe the whole idea of Sparta being Urizen kind of like got thrown in the water because it's been so long since I've heard that theory out there. So, but for the most part, that's probably why they cut that trailer the way they cut it, to highlight that particular like parallel between the characters and possible conclusion. So that was one example that I just noticed. And if you guys look back at maybe like all the trailers, like maybe look back at all the different trailers that you've seen and the different things that they personally highlighted with each and every single individual trailer, peep this. When it came to the seeming death of Dante by the hands of V, it kind of highlighted something. Yes, we know that V didn't necessarily kill Dante or did any damage to him, obviously, because we see him at the final act of the game, and I feel like that particular part was probably like midway through the game. But think of it for a second. Like, that particular moment where they did cut the trailer where you saw Dante dying, I don't necessarily think that they meant to highlight the death of Dante, but the end of his story. Like, this is probably Dante's last story until he retires. Like, you can see that he's getting old. Whether he's as powerful as he once was, or he's more powerful now, 100% arguable. You'll probably see yourself in a bunch of circle arguments. But I feel like when it comes to Dante as a character, he cannot keep doing this job forever. So why not pass on the mantle to another character? You also have to take into consideration the way how they're focusing the story. So this story to me kind of feels reminiscent to Devil May Cry 3. I said that in like my previous videos talking about it, but the story also kind of feels like Devil May Cry 4 when it comes to the focus, where the focus is Nero. The story starts off with Nero. The story kind of revolves around Nero kind of being the hero after Urizen takes out Dante, Lady, and Trish, and it's pretty much V and Nero having to just solidify themselves and take out Urizen, or find out who's doing this, the cloaked figure, who is Virgil. So the story focuses around the up and coming, not who was there before. And whether you agree with it or not, whether you like it or not, isn't really the focus of what I'm trying to talk about, but it's trying to highlight their direction with Dante and ending his story and ending him as the well-known devil hunter that we know him to be. So that's just something I also want to highlight as well. You also have to take into consideration, think of the story as a whole, right? And think of the characters that we're getting. I'm not necessarily saying that these characters meeting up with one another could mean the end, but you have in Devil May Cry 5 everybody in this. You have everybody. Mind you, we don't even know the full scope of the cameos, of the things that we're going to see in the game, because the game isn't out yet. Because we got Morrison. Like, I didn't even think we'll ever see Morrison in the Devil May Cry game, because he was associated with the Devil May Cry anime. And on top of that, like I was mentioning before, the flashbacks. But I feel like this game is bringing so many different things and avenues. For Dante's story, mind you, they're bringing so many different things and avenues to this story to kind of conclude it. Like, usually, and this is just me going off of other works of narrative fiction, where you have like the end game, if you want to call it, quote unquote, where when a story is getting ready to wrap up, you bring out everybody. You bring out everybody from previous works, previous arcs, and then you conclude it in an epic finale against whatever new threat that's going on, whatever new situation that's going on, and then you just end the storyline right then and there for the character. So that's just me going off of just old works of fictions, because, like, again, the game hasn't come out yet, and this is kind of me just throwing speculation on the whole subject. But when it comes to it, like, we don't know who we could potentially see in this game. It could be so many different returning characters, re-envisioned characters that's going to be in this game to highlight the end of Dante's story. Like, this could potentially be, like I said, Dante's last game. Now, with all that being said, most likely, if they do continue Devil May Cry, Nero is going to be the face of the next Devil May Cry series. Do they have to call it Devil May Cry 6? Heck no. Devil May Cry 5 is to highlight Dante's story. Or the Devil May Cry series is all there to highlight Dante. They can keep the name Devil May Cry, but I don't feel like they should continue with the numbers. They can do something completely different. I remember in an interview a while back, probably around like E3 Tokyo Game Show, there was a comment made by Itsuno when it came, or when it was regarded making Devil May Cry, or he was regarded making Devil May Cry 5, he said that at first he thought he was going to be making a sequel for DMC 2. I'm not saying that now at this point, since he already made Devil May Cry 5, he's going to go right back to DMC Devil May Cry 2 and start developing that. But now that, you know, if he's going to end the Dante storyline and end Devil May Cry 5, he can probably use Nero as his new figurehead, reincorporate the game in a different type of way that highlights Nero as a character, and then he can just go off of there. Maybe some of the elements that he wanted to use for DMC 2, he can just use it in Devil May Cry, whatever they end up adding the subtitle for it to be. So yeah, most likely Nero's going to be the face. How V plays a part in all of this, I don't know. For the most part, a lot of people are speculating that his death is going to be a thing. Who knows? Maybe they could potentially save him. People were speculating, and you guys were telling me in my comment section down below that V could potentially be like the key to resurrecting Virgil or getting him back to full power. V could be a devil's advocate. You know, like he could be the red herring within the series where he was actually working for Urizen this whole time. Who knows? None of us is 100% concrete or sure about that fact. But yeah. Those are my thoughts on whether or not Devil May Cry 5 is the last Devil May Cry game. I feel like this is the last Devil May Cry game for Dante and his entourage, but for the most part, I do feel like there's going to be more Devil May Cry games to come. Nero as the headliner, if they do plan on making more, Nero will definitely be the main character. But yeah, I'd like to thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate you guys stopping by and just showing me as much love as you have and just commenting your thoughts and your opinions on the videos I make. Also, guys, if anything, always check the description, because the description will have all different various types of information about me for you guys, whether you guys want to contact me on Twitter, Facebook, or you guys want to stop by on one of my Twitch live streams, then you guys definitely can do that. All that information will be in the description down below. But I'd like to thank you guys for watching. You guys are awesome, and you guys take care. Peace.